fix that Ferrari! It's yours! Richard Blackstone's voice drips with contempt as he gestures at the $300,000 smoking wreck. What's wrong, old man? Scared to touch something worth more than your entire bloodline? Samuel Washington stands silent in his janitor coveralls, weathered black hands gripping his father's toolbox. Around them, Silicon Valley's power elite watch their $50 million deal crumble on live television. I said move! Blackstone shoves past Samuel toward the smoldering Ferrari. The crowd murmurs approval. Security steps closer. Samuel's jaw tightens, but his voice stays steady. Sir, I can fix that. Blackstone's laughter cuts like glass. You? Fix a Ferrari? Boy, you can barely fix a toilet. What happened next would shatter everything these people believed about power, intelligence, and who really deserves respect. The Teknova Corporation Showcase Hall buzzes with Silicon Valley's most powerful players. Glass walls stretch 40 feet high, displaying real-time stock prices and innovation metrics. Today's event determines which AI automotive technologies receive massive investment and which companies survive the next quarter. At center stage sits the crown jewel, a Ferrari SF90 Stradale hybrid, retrofitted with Teknova's revolutionary AI integration system. 3 years of development, countless late nights, and the company's entire future rest on this single demonstration. CEO Michael Carter adjusts his tie nervously as investors from Tokyo to Frankfurt watch via livestream. The Ferrari represents more than a car. It's proof that Teknova can merge cutting-edge AI with the world's most demanding mechanical systems. Ladies and gentlemen, Carter announces, witness the future of automotive intelligence. He presses the ignition button. Nothing. He tries again. The engine coughs, sputters, then releases a plume of acrid smoke. Warning lights flash across the dashboard like a Christmas tree. The crowd shifts uncomfortably. Lead engineer Dr. Patricia Rodriguez rushes to the hood. Her hands shake as she opens it, revealing sparking wires and the bitter smell of burning electronics. 3 years of work literally going up in smoke. We're experiencing a minor technical difficulty, Carter announces, sweat beading his forehead. Minor? Stock tickers on the wall screen show Teknova plummeting in real time, down 12%, 15, 20. The demonstration was supposed to showcase Teknova's breakthrough AI system that learns driver behavior and optimizes engine performance in real time. Investors had flown in from 3 continents to witness this moment. The technology promised to revolutionize not just luxury cars, but the entire automotive industry. Instead, smoke pours from a $250,000 Ferrari, while 500 of the world's most influential tech leaders watch in horror. In the back corner, Samuel Washington continues mopping, but his trained ear catches something others miss. That grinding sound isn't random. It's a specific mechanical cry for help. 40 years of listening to engines teaches a man to hear their pain. Dr. Rodriguez waves over her team. MIT graduates, all of them. They cluster around the Ferrari with diagnostic tablets and concerned expressions. Their $200,000 education suddenly feels inadequate against this smoking reality. The hybrid system is completely corrupted, Rodriguez announces after 10 agonizing minutes. We'll need to ship it back to Maranello for complete rebuilding. A collective gasp ripples through the crowd. Maranello means months of delays. It means admitting failure on the world stage. It means Teknova's revolutionary AI became yesterday's news before it even launched. Japanese investor Hiroshi Tanaka's voice crackles through the video conference speaker. Chen-san, our board meets in 30 minutes. If this demonstration fails, we must reconsider our $50 million commitment. 30 minutes. 200 Teknova employees just learned their jobs hang by a thread. The smoke alarm begins its piercing wail. Building management announces over the intercom, please prepare for possible evacuation. Emergency services have been notified. Fire department sirens wail in the distance, growing closer. Samuel steps forward, toolbox in hand. Excuse me, sir, I might be able to help. Conversations halt. 500 pairs of eyes turn toward the janitor in worn coveralls. I know that sound. Samuel continues quietly. That grinding pattern, I've heard it before. Richard Blackstone laughs, a sharp cutting sound that slices through the tension. Oh, this is rich. The cleaning crew thinks they're engineers now. More laughter spreads through the crowd like a virus. Samuel's cheeks burn, but he stands firm. Sir, I have 40 years of experience with... Experience? Blackstone interrupts, his voice amplified by the acoustics. Experience pushing a mop doesn't qualify you for rocket science, boy. This isn't some ghetto garage where you bang on things until they work. The room temperature seems to drop. Several executives shift uncomfortably, but none speak up. Blackstone's investment firm controls too much money for casual opposition. Samuel's voice stays level despite the provocation. I was a mechanic in the Army, worked on helicopters, Humvees, complex hydraulic systems, ancient history. Blackstone cuts him off with a dismissive wave. This is modern technology, quantum computing, AI integration, things about your background couldn't possibly comprehend. The emphasis on background draws knowing looks from Blackstone's circle. They understand the code perfectly. Executive VP Diana Walsh whispers loudly enough for others to hear. Maybe we should keep security closer to our equipment. You never know what people might try to steal. More snickers. Samuel's hands tighten on his toolbox. Chen looks desperate as more smoke billows from the Ferrari. We need solutions, not debates. Rodriguez, how long for a real diagnosis? At least 6 hours with proper equipment, she admits, tablet trembling in her hands. Maybe longer. AI corruption could have damaged multiple systems. We don't have 6 hours, Carter snaps, watching his company's stock price crater in real time. Down 25% now. Margin calls start triggering in investment funds across 3 continents. Pension funds holding Technova shares hemorrhage value. Individual investors watch their retirement savings evaporate. Samuel takes another step forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. Sir, just let me look at it. I won't touch anything, just look. Absolutely not. Blackstone moves to physically block him, designer shoes clicking on the marble floor. I won't have this company's reputation destroyed by some diversity hire pretending to be qualified. Diversity hire? Samuel's voice carries a new edge. I've been fixing machines since before you knew what a wrench was. Machines, sure. Lawn mowers and broken toilets. But this is a $300,000 Ferrari with military-grade AI integration, not some broken-down Chevy in the projects where you people live. The racist implications land like physical blows. Samuel's weathered face hardens, but his voice stays controlled. Young engineer Lisa Park whispers to her colleague, Actually, Samuel fixed our entire HVAC system last month. The contractors said it couldn't be done. And the elevator control system, adds another voice. When Otis gave up, Samuel had it running in 2 hours. The server room is cooling too, someone else contributes. Saved us $50,000 in emergency repairs. Blackstone whirls around, his face flushing red. Enough! I don't care if he can fix a toaster. This is precision engineering worth more than his annual salary. 40 times more, CFO Robert Sterling jokes, drawing cruel laughter from the investment crowd. Samuel's jaw tightens, but his voice stays steady. Mr. Carter, I hear exactly what's wrong. The electric motor timing is off from the combustion cycle. Someone forced a software update without recalibrating the physical systems. Rodriguez blinks in surprise. Her diagnostic equipment hasn't even reached that conclusion yet. How could you possibly know that from just listening? Because I've been listening to engines my whole life. They tell you what's wrong if you know how to hear them. Blackstone scoffs loudly. Mystical engine whispering? This is Silicon Valley, not some voodoo shop. We deal in facts and data, not folk wisdom from the help. Help? Samuel's composure finally shows cracks. Sir, I've forgotten more about engines than most of these engineers ever learned. Forgotten is right, Blackstone shoots back, his voice carrying across the hall. Along with knowing your place in the natural order, security! 2 guards step forward uncertainly. Samuel hasn't broken any laws. He's simply offered assistance during a crisis. This man is disrupting a critical business meeting. Remove him before he causes more damage. The guards hesitate. Other employees watch nervously. This feels wrong, but Blackstone's influence runs deep. Chen looks torn between desperation and social pressure. $50 million versus corporate hierarchy. The math is brutal, but the social cost of backing a black janitor over a white millionaire feels even more dangerous. I think we should let the professionals handle this, Carter says finally, his voice barely audible. Samuel's shoulders sag slightly. 40 years of this. Years of always the same story. The right answer is dismissed because it comes from the wrong person. But as he turns to leave, toolbox heavy in his weathered hands, a new voice cuts through the tension like a blade. Wait. Dr. Elena Vasquez steps forward from the VIP section. At 67, she commands instant respect throughout the automotive world. Formula One engineer, NASA consultant, Tesla's original powertrain designer, when she speaks, the industry listens. I'd like to hear what this man has to say. The room falls silent. Even Blackstone hesitates to challenge Vasquez directly. 21 minutes until the Japanese board meeting. Everything hangs in the balance. Samuel Washington learned the language of engines in his father's garage on Detroit's East Side, back when the Motor City still lived up to its name. The year was 1976. Samuel was 12, small for his age, but Marcus Washington saw something special in his son's eyes when metal sang. "Every engine has a heartbeat, son," Marcus would say, his calloused hands guiding Samuel's smaller ones across a carburetor. "You got to listen. Really listen. Not with your ears alone, but with something deeper." Marcus worked the line at Ford's River Rouge plant until automation and racial politics pushed him out. 43 years old with nowhere to go except his backyard garage, fixing neighbors' cars for grocery money. But in that cramped space filled with salvaged parts and motor oil dreams, he passed down wisdom no engineering school could teach. Samuel absorbed it all. The way a V8's rumble changes when compression drops, how transmission fluid sounds different when it's burning versus simply hot. The subtle vibration that means a timing belt is 3 weeks from failure. "White folks got their books and degrees," Marcus explained one winter evening, breath visible in the unheated garage. "But you got something they can't buy. You got the touch, you got the ear. You respect the machine, and it'll tell you its secrets." When Samuel turned 18, Marcus gave him the toolbox. Not the fancy craftsman set from Sears, but the old metal box with its dents and scratches, each tool shaped by decades of honest work. "Take care of these, and they'll take care of you," Marcus said. "But remember, tools don't make the mechanic. The mechanic makes the tools." 3 months later, Marcus suffered a massive heart attack while changing Mrs. Johnson's transmission. Samuel found him there, wrench still in his hand, oil staining his work shirt. The funeral filled Mount Olive Baptist Church to capacity. Marcus Washington had fixed half the neighborhood's cars for free when money was tight. He'd taught a generation of young men that honest work had dignity, even when the world said otherwise. Samuel joined the Army 2 weeks after burying his father. 8 years in mechanized infantry, maintaining everything from Humvees to Chinook helicopters. The military taught him precision, but his father's wisdom taught him intuition. In the desert heat of Kuwait, while other mechanics followed diagnostic protocols, Samuel could identify problems by engine sound alone. His unit commander, a white colonel from Georgia, grudgingly admitted that Washington's got magic hands. But magic hands meant nothing back in civilian Detroit. The auto industry was hemorrhaging jobs. Samuel's military experience impressed hiring managers until they met him face to face. Suddenly, positions got filled by more qualified candidates. He worked wherever he could find acceptance. Independent garages in rough neighborhoods where skill mattered more than skin color. Late-night towing services where desperation overcame prejudice, always moving, always proving himself, never quite finding the recognition his father had promised would come. The years accumulated like scar tissue, a marriage that couldn't survive financial pressure, a son who grew distant when Samuel couldn't provide the life he'd wanted to give, grandchildren who barely knew their grandfather worked magic with metal. At 52, Samuel took the janitor job at Technova, health insurance for his diabetic wife, steady paycheck for his grandchildren's school clothes, pride swallowed for family survival. But late at night, when the building emptied and Silicon Valley's brightest minds went home to their suburban castles, Samuel worked his real magic. The HVAC system that 3 contractors couldn't fix? Samuel found the problem in 20 minutes. The elevator that trapped executives between floors? Samuel had it purring in an hour. He studied engineering manuals like scripture borrowed from the public library during lunch breaks, absorbed decades of automotive evolution through technical journals and YouTube videos watched on his ancient smartphone. His mind cataloged every advancement, every innovation, building bridges between old wisdom and new technology. The other janitors knew. Maintenance staff whispered about Samuel's abilities like urban legends. But management never noticed. To them, he was invisible, just another uniformed figure emptying trash cans and mopping floors. Samuel carried his father's words like armor against daily indignities. When executives spoke over him as if he weren't there, when security guards followed him through expensive neighborhoods where he'd been called for emergency repairs, when people locked their car doors at red lights, seeing only his skin color, not his skill. Every machine has a heartbeat, he'd whisper to himself during the worst moments. Respect it, and it'll tell you exactly what it needs. But now, standing before this smoking Ferrari with 500 hostile eyes watching, Samuel added his own wisdom to his father's. Every person has dignity, even when the world tries to take it away. His weathered hands gripped the toolbox handle. 46 years since his father's death. 40 years of being underestimated. 4 decades of proving himself to people who'd never see past their prejudices. Maybe today would be different. Maybe today, the machine would speak loud enough for everyone to hear. Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped through the crowd like Moses parting the Red Sea. At 67, her silver hair pulled back in a precise bun, she commanded the kind of respect that money couldn't buy and politics couldn't touch. Formula One teams called her when physics defied their best efforts. NASA consulted her when rockets needed to fly. Tesla's original Roadster purrs because of her powertrain design. When she spoke, engines listened. When she moved, the automotive world held its breath. Mr. Blackstone. Her voice carried the authority of 5 decades at the pinnacle of mechanical engineering. You seem very confident about this man's limitations. Tell me, how many Ferrari engines have you personally rebuilt? Blackstone's face flushed. That's not the point. That's exactly the point. Vasquez's steel-gray eyes locked onto his. How many hybrid systems have you diagnosed? How many AI integrations have you debugged? Silence stretched like a taut wire. Blackstone's finance background included Harvard MBA courses, not hands-on technical work. Dr. Vasquez, with all due respect, Blackstone recalled, we can't risk a $300,000 Ferrari on some janitor's folk wisdom. Folk wisdom? Vasquez turned to Samuel. Tell me what you hear in that engine. Samuel straightened. Recognition from a legend changed everything. Ma'am, the electric motor's magnetic field synchronization is approximately 0.7 seconds off from the combustion timing. Someone updated the AI software without recalibrating the physical actuator tolerances. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. Rodriguez fumbled with her diagnostic tablet, trying to confirm what Samuel had identified by ear alone. Continue, Vasquez said. The grinding sound indicates the AI system is trying to compensate for hardware it doesn't recognize, like speaking English to someone who only understands Spanish. The translation's getting lost. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Even the MIT engineers exchanged glances. Blackstone's voice rose in desperation. Lucky guess. He probably Googled Ferrari problems on his welfare phone. Mr. Blackstone. Vasquez's tone could freeze helium. I propose a simple test. If Mr. Washington can correctly diagnose this Ferrari's specific problems without touching it, he earns the right to attempt repairs. If he's wrong, he walks away permanently. The crowd pressed closer. Cameras zoomed in from multiple angles. Social media streams exploded with betting pools about the janitor versus the Ferrari. Chen looked at the countdown timer. 18 minutes until the Japanese board meeting. Sweat stained his shirt collar as stock prices continued their free fall. The stakes, Vasquez continued, are simple. Mr. Washington has one chance to prove his diagnostic abilities. Complete accuracy required, no second guesses, no partial credit. Blackstone sensed opportunity. And when he fails, Vasquez agreed, he leaves immediately. Security escorts him out. He never approaches company equipment again. Samuel's jaw tightened. One chance. 40 years of experience reduced to a single moment of validation. But, Vasquez's voice cut through the tension, if he's correct, you personally will apologize for your behavior. Publicly, on camera. Blackstone's face went white. Apologize? To a janitor? On live stream? His reputation, his social standing, his entire identity depended on never showing weakness to people he considered beneath him. That's ridiculous. I won't. Afraid of losing to someone you've been insulting? Vasquez's question carried the sting of a surgical blade. The crowd sensed blood in the water. Phones lifted higher. Social media engagement spiked. #Justice for Samuel began trending organically. Chen's phone buzzed with frantic calls from board members. Stock analysts were demanding explanations. The company's reputation was melting faster than the Ferrari's wiring harness. 15 minutes, Carter announced, his voice cracking. We need a decision now. Fire department sirens grew louder outside. Emergency vehicles gathered in the parking lot as smoke continued billowing from the demonstration stage. I'll take the challenge, Samuel said quietly. Blackstone laughed, but the sound held an edge of hysteria. You'll take it? Boy, you don't understand what you're risking. When you fail, and you will fail, I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. Security, maintenance, cleaning, nothing. I'll blacklist you from here to Detroit. Samuel's voice stayed steady. And when will I succeed? When you succeed, Vasquez interjected. Technova offers you a position in their engineering department. Full salary, full benefits, full respect. Chen's mouth fell open. He hadn't agreed to that. But with millions watching and his company dying in real time, he nodded frantically. The crowd formed a literal circle around the smoking Ferrari. 500 tech executives, engineers, and media representatives created an arena where reputation and prejudice would face the judgment of mechanical truth. Ladies and gentlemen, Vasquez announced, Mr. Samuel Washington will now demonstrate whether 40 years of experience can diagnose what 3 MIT engineers could not. Camera drones hovered overhead. Livestream viewers peaked at 2.3 million. The chat exploded with predictions, most betting against the black janitor in worn coveralls. Samuel approached the Ferrari slowly, reverently. His father's toolbox remained closed. This test allowed only observation and listening. Complete silence, please, Vasquez commanded. The hall fell quiet except for the Ferrari's mechanical death rattle. Samuel closed his eyes and listened with 4 decades of trained intuition. Blackstone whispered loudly enough for cameras to catch. Watch him sweat. Watch him realize he's in over his head. Samuel's eyes snapped open. His voice carried clearly across the silent hall. 3 specific problems. First, the AI software update corrupted the hybrid synchronization protocol. Second, someone manually adjusted the electric motor timing to compensate, making the problem worse. Third, the diagnostic system is generating false error codes because it's reading the manual adjustments as hardware failures. Rodriguez checked her tablet frantically. The crowd held its breath. The solution, Samuel continued, bypasses the corrupted protocols entirely. Create a translation layer between the AI and the hardware. 3 calibration adjustments, 2 wire modifications, 1 firmware patch, total time, 12 minutes. Vasquez pulled out her own diagnostic equipment, military-grade precision instruments worth more than most people's cars. She connected them to the Ferrari's systems and waited for results. The hall remained silent except for the countdown timer's electronic heartbeat. 10 seconds, 20, 30. Vasquez looked up from her equipment, her weathered face showing the first hint of amazement she'd displayed in decades. Gentlemen and ladies, she announced, Mr. Washington's diagnosis is 100% accurate. The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. Social media exploded. Samuel stood quietly beside the Ferrari, his father's wisdom vindicated at last. 14 minutes remained. Now comes the real test. The crowd's eruption died to electric silence as the implications sank in. Samuel Washington, janitor, diversity hire, boy who didn't know his place, had just diagnosed a $250,000 Ferrari's complex AI failure with perfect accuracy. Blackstone's face cycled through emotions like a broken traffic light. Disbelief, rage, desperate calculation. Lucky guess, he declared, his voice pitched too high. Anyone could have, Mr. Blackstone, Dr. Vasquez interrupted with surgical precision. You owe this man an apology. I owe him nothing. This is a setup. Someone coached him, fed him the answers. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Several executives nodded, grasping for any explanation that preserved their worldview. A black janitor couldn't possibly outperform MIT engineers. There had to be a trick. Samuel's shoulders sagged slightly. Even when he proved himself, they'd find ways to diminish his achievement. 40 years of this, always the same story. But Vasquez stepped forward like an avenging angel. Very well. If Mr. Washington was coached, he'll fail the next challenge. Her voice carried across the hall with authority. Complete diagnosis and repair, no assistance, no consultation, 13 minutes remaining. She gestured toward the Ferrari. Fix it, Mr. Washington. Show them what 4 decades of experience looks like. Samuel approached his father's toolbox with reverent hands. The metal case bore scars from 40 years of honest work, dents from Detroit automotive shops, scratches from Army motor pools, oil stains from countless late-night repairs. He opened it slowly, revealing tools that belonged in a museum of American craftsmanship. Not the cheap imports flooding modern markets, but real steel forged when quality mattered more than profit margins. Each tool had been shaped by Marcus Washington's hands, then perfected by Samuel's decades of use. Executive VP Diana Walsh whispered loudly, "Look at those ancient tools. He probably bought them at a pawn shop." CFO Robert Sterling added, "My mechanic has better equipment than that." But Dr. Vasquez recognized something the executives missed. These weren't just tools. They were instruments of mastery, worn smooth by genuine expertise. First revelation, the sound analysis. Samuel lifted a simple stethoscope, the kind doctors used before digital everything. The crowd snickered. In an age of million-dollar diagnostic computers, Samuel chose the most basic instrument possible. "Seriously?" Blackstone laughed. "What's next, reading tea leaves?" Samuel ignored the mockery and placed the stethoscope against the Ferrari's engine block, listening with the intensity of a master conductor hearing symphony secrets. "Kill the lights," he requested quietly. Security looked to Carter, who nodded frantically. The showcase hall plunged into near darkness except for emergency lighting and the Ferrari's dashboard glow. Samuel closed his eyes and entered a meditative state his father had taught him decades earlier. In the silence, the engine's voice became clear as conversation. The crowd grew restless. Phones lit up with flash photography. Social media comments exploded with ridicule. Granddad's having a senior moment. Someone call Adult Protective Services. This is embarrassing to watch. But Samuel remained motionless, absorbing information that expensive computers couldn't detect. He moved the stethoscope to different contact points with scientific precision, mapping the Ferrari's mechanical heartbeat like a cardiologist examining a patient. "There," he whispered after 90 seconds, which felt like hours. "The electric motor's magnetic field is pulsing 0.7 seconds behind the combustion timing. But that's not the root problem." He shifted positions again, pressing the stethoscope against the transmission housing. Someone forced an over-the-air software update without understanding the physical dependencies. The AI is trying to optimize performance based on parameters that no longer match reality. Blackstone scoffed loudly. Mystical engine whispering again. "This isn't a seance. It's supposed to be engineering." But Rodriguez was frantically checking her diagnostic equipment. Her tablet displayed exactly what Samuel had identified through sound alone. The synchronization timing matched his assessment perfectly. "How is that possible?" she muttered, recalibrating her instruments. Samuel opened his eyes. "Engines talk if you know their language. This one's screaming that it's confused. The software thinks it's talking to a 2023 model with updated sensors, but the hardware is still 2022 specification." Young engineer David Kim pulled out his phone and started recording. This was either complete madness or the most impressive diagnostic performance he'd ever witnessed. Second revelation, the visual systems analysis. Samuel requested the lights be restored and approached the Ferrari's open hood with surgeon-like focus. His weathered hands hovered inches above components, never touching but seeing everything. "Here's where someone tried to fix the software problem with hardware solutions," he announced, pointing to specific areas without contact. The crowd pressed closer, cameras capturing every gesture. Samuel's fingers traced invisible lines above the engine bay, identifying problems that required decades of experience to recognize. "These mounting bolts are twisted counterclockwise when the specification calls for clockwise torque." Someone was fighting the AI's attempts to recalibrate. He moved his hands above a sensor harness without making contact. This wiring shows heat discoloration from electrical resistance. The manual override created a feedback loop that's burning out components. Rodriguez followed his gestures with her tablet, confirming each observation. Her expensive diagnostic equipment kept validating what Samuel identified through visual inspection alone. And here, Samuel continued, indicating a specific actuator assembly. Someone forced this component into position rather than addressing the timing conflict. Each fix created 3 new problems. He painted an invisible picture in the air above the engine. The original software update corrupted the hybrid coordination protocol. Instead of rolling back the update, someone tried to manually compensate. But manual adjustments in a learning AI system create exponential errors. Young engineer Lisa Park whispered to her colleague, "He's reading that engine like a book he wrote himself." "Like a book he's been writing for 40 years, came the reply. Blackstone's desperation ratcheted higher. "So what if he can see obvious damage? Seeing isn't fixing. Anyone can point at broken parts." "Obvious?" Dr. Vasquez challenged. "Your engineers spent 2 hours and couldn't identify these issues." "Lucky coincidence," Blackstone insisted. "Even a broken clock is right twice a day." Samuel straightened and faced the crowd. "Sir, if I was just guessing, I couldn't tell you the exact sequence of failed repairs." He pointed to specific components in order. First, they tried resetting the AI learning parameters. Failed. Second, they manually adjusted motor timing. Made it worse. Third, they forced new sensor calibration values. Created the feedback loop. Fourth, they attempted hardware overrides. Caused the heat damage. Fifth, they installed emergency diagnostic protocols. That's why you're getting false error codes on top of real problems. The MIT engineers exchanged stunned glances. Rodriguez checked her diagnostic history logs. Samuel had identified every attempted repair in chronological order without accessing any computer systems. "How could you possibly know our repair sequence?" Rodriguez asked. "Because I can see the consequences of each attempt in the physical system. Every mistake leaves traces if you know what to look for." Third revelation, the elegant solution. Samuel stepped back from the Ferrari and pulled out a small notebook, the kind mechanics used before tablets existed. He sketched rapidly with a stubby pencil, his weathered hands moving with architect precision. "The manufacturer's solution would be complete component replacement," he explained while drawing. 50,000 in parts, 3 weeks shipping from Maranello, total system rebuild. The sketch took shape with remarkable detail. Samuel drew the Ferrari's hybrid system from memory, including components not visible in the engine bay. But the real problem isn't hardware failure, it's translation failure. The AI speaks one language, the hardware speaks another. The software update broke their common vocabulary. He drew connecting lines between components with engineering precision. "We create a translation layer, teach the old hardware to speak the new software's language without replacing anything." Dr. Vasquez studied the sketch intently. Her eyes widened, something that hadn't happened in engineering circles for a decade. "This is..." She paused, searching for words. "Brilliant in its simplicity. You're essentially creating a mechanical Rosetta Stone." Rodriguez checked the diagram against her technical manuals. That should actually work. It's not in any textbook, but the logic is sound." Samuel nodded. "Sometimes the answer isn't following the manual. Sometimes it's understanding what the machine actually wants to do." He added more details to his sketch. Specific wire routing, calibration sequences, timing adjustments. AI doesn't need new hardware, it needs better communication with existing hardware. Blackstone's final desperate gambit erupted. "I don't care what sketches he draws. I will not be shown up by the help. This is our industry, our world. People like him need to know their place." The naked racism finally broke into the open. Several executives stepped away from Blackstone, suddenly uncomfortable with their association. Cameras captured everything for posterity. But Samuel continued working with quiet dignity, immune to the hatred swirling around him. His hands moved through the engine bay with ballet precision, never wasted motion, never hesitation. 11 minutes remaining," Carter announced, his voice cracking with stress. Samuel looked up from his notebook and smiled, the first genuine smile he'd shown all day. "Sir, I only need 8. 8 minutes!" Blackstone's voice cracked with hysteria. "He's lost his mind! Complex AI integration takes hours, not minutes!" But Samuel had already begun. His weathered hands moved through the Ferrari's engine bay with surgical precision, each motion deliberate and economical. No wasted energy, no hesitation. 4 decades of mechanical mastery distilled into pure efficiency. The crowd pressed closer, forming a human amphitheater around the smoking Ferrari. Camera drones hovered overhead. 2.9 million viewers watched the live stream as #Fix That Ferrari exploded across social media platforms. Samuel's first move surprised everyone. Instead of diving into complex electronics, he reached for a simple multimeter from his father's toolbox. The crowd murmured disapproval. "Ancient equipment for ancient thinking," someone whispered. But Samuel knew something they didn't. Modern diagnostic computers could read symptoms, but they couldn't feel the heartbeat of a confused machine. He connected the multimeter to specific junction points, watching numbers that told stories of expensive equipment missed. Voltage fluctuations, resistance patterns, the electrical signature of a system fighting itself. "There," he murmured, pointing to readings invisible to the crowd. "The translation protocol needs to start here." His hands moved with ballet grace, disconnecting specific sensor leads while keeping others active. Each wire served a purpose in his mental blueprint, the mechanical Rosetta Stone he'd sketched minutes earlier. Blackstone paced behind the crowd like a caged predator. "He's randomly disconnecting things. Stop him before he destroys everything!" But Dr. Vasquez held up a restraining hand. "Let the master work!" Samuel reached deeper into the engine bay, his fingers finding connection points that weren't marked in any manual. This was intuitive engineering, the kind that bridges theory and instinct. "First bridge established," he announced quietly, connecting 2 systems that had never communicated directly. "The AI can now read raw sensor data instead of processed translations." The Ferrari's dashboard flickered. Warning lights that had blazed like Christmas ornaments began dimming one by one. "What's happening?" Rodriguez whispered, checking her tablet frantically. "He's teaching the computer to speak machine?" Dr. Vasquez replied with something approaching awe. Samuel's movements accelerated. His hands danced through the engine bay, creating connections that existed in no engineering textbook. This wasn't following protocols. This was writing new ones in real time. "Second bridge," he called out, linking the electric motor control to the combustion timing system. "Now they're synchronized." The Ferrari's mechanical death rattle shifted tone. The grinding noise that had plagued the demonstration began smoothing into something approaching harmony. 5 minutes remaining. Sweat beaded on Samuel's forehead despite his outward calm. The complexity of real-time AI integration pushed even his considerable abilities. One wrong connection could fry the entire system, but his father's voice guided every decision. "Respect the machine, and it'll tell you its secrets." "Third bridge," Samuel announced, his voice steady despite the pressure. AI optimization and hardware feedback now share common language. The Ferrari's engine bay had transformed. What looked like random modifications to the untrained eye formed an elegant solution to experts who understood the deeper principles. 4 minutes, Carter called out, his voice barely audible over his own heartbeat. Samuel stepped back from the Ferrari and surveyed his work. Connections that didn't exist in factory specifications. Routing that violated standard practices. Solutions that emerged from pure mechanical intuition. "Ready for the startup sequence," he announced. The hall fell silent except for the countdown timer's electronic heartbeat. 3.2 million viewers held their breath. The chat stream exploded with predictions, most betting against the black janitor in worn coveralls. Blackstone made one final desperate play. "When this fails, and it will fail, I want him arrested for equipment sabotage. I want criminal charges filed." Samuel's hand hovered over the ignition button. 40 years of being underestimated. 4 decades of proving himself to people who'd never see past their prejudices. Every slight, every dismissal, every moment of being treated as less than human focused into this single instant. His father's toolbox sat open beside him, tools gleaming under the showcase lights. Marcus Washington's legacy lived in those instruments, in the hands that wielded them, in the wisdom passed down through generations of mechanical masters. Samuel whispered the words his father had taught him. "Every machine has a heartbeat. Every person has dignity." He pressed the ignition button. 3 eternal seconds passed in absolute silence. Then the Ferrari's engine purred to life with mechanical perfection. Not just running, singing. The hybrid system engaged seamlessly. Dashboard lights showed optimal performance across every metric. The AI responded instantly to input commands. Dr. Vasquez connected her diagnostic equipment and stared at readings that defied belief. Perfect synchronization. Zero error codes. Performance parameters exceed factory specifications. The crowd erupted in thunderous applause that shook the building's glass walls. Camera flashes created a strobe effect. Social media exploded with praise and amazement. Samuel stood quietly beside the purring Ferrari, his father's dignity intact, his own talent finally recognized. But the sweetest sound wasn't the applause. It was the Ferrari's perfect mechanical heartbeat, speaking the language only Samuel Washington truly understood. The applause thundered for 90 seconds before Dr. Vasquez raised her hand in silence. Her voice carried across the hall with the authority of 5 decades at engineering's pinnacle. Ladies and gentlemen, what we've witnessed here defies conventional understanding. Mr. Washington has not only repaired this Ferrari, he's improved it. She gestured to her diagnostic equipment. Performance parameters exceed factory specifications by 12%. The AI integration runs smoother than the original design. This is mastery at its highest level. CEO Carter stepped forward, his earlier panic replaced by desperate gratitude. Mr. Washington, on behalf of Technova Corporation, I offer you an immediate promotion to Chief Technical Advisor, salary increase of $95,000 annually, full executive benefits package. The crowd gasped. A janitor to the executive in 8 minutes. Silicon Valley had seen disruption, but nothing like this. Furthermore, Carter continued, I'm creating the Samuel Washington Institute for Practical Engineering, a program to identify and develop talent based on ability, not credentials. Hiroshi Tanaka's voice crackled through the video conference. Chen-san, our investment commitment is confirmed. $50 million approved unanimously. Stock tickers on the wall screen showed Technova surging upward, 40% recovery in real time. Pension funds and retail investors watched their portfolios resurrect from the dead. Dr. Vasquez approached Samuel with an outstretched hand. Mr. Washington, I formally invite you to collaborate on my next project, developing AI systems that learn from master craftsmen like yourself. She turned to address the crowd. This man represents something we've forgotten in our rush toward automation, the irreplaceable value of human expertise. Tesla's head of engineering pushed through the crowd. Mr. Washington, we'd like to discuss a consulting position. Name your price. Business cards materialized from every direction. Automotive Week requested an exclusive interview. 3 major manufacturers wanted him on their technical advisory boards. Samuel accepted the recognition with quiet dignity, his father's toolbox still open beside the purring Ferrari. 40 years of waiting for this moment, and it felt exactly right. But the sweetest validation came from an unexpected source. Young engineer Lisa Park approached shyly. Mr. Washington, would you teach me to listen to engines the way you do? Samuel smiled, the first genuine smile the crowd had seen from him. Everyone can learn to listen, miss. The machines want to talk. Most folks just never learn their language. The countdown timer showed 0. The crisis was over. Technova was saved. And Samuel Washington had finally found his place in a world that had tried so hard to keep him out. In the aftermath of Samuel's triumph, the hall buzzed with congratulations and business propositions. But Richard Blackstone stood frozen like a statue, his face cycling through disbelief, rage, and dawning horror as the implications crystallized. The Ferrari purred behind him, perfect mechanical testimony to everything he'd gotten wrong. Dr. Vasquez approached with the measured pace of inevitable justice. Mr. Blackstone, I believe you owe someone an apology. This is... Blackstone's usual arrogance crumbled into stammering confusion. 3 million live stream viewers waited for his response. Every major news outlet had cameras rolling. You called this man boy. You questioned his intelligence. You threatened his livelihood. Vasquez's voice carried the weight of moral authority. Publicly, on camera, what do you have to say now? Blackstone's investment banker instincts kicked in. Damage control, minimize exposure. Look, there may have been some misunderstandings, heat of the moment, business pressures. Misunderstandings? Samuel's voice cut through the noise, quiet but clear. Sir, you said people like me need to know our place. The crowd pressed closer. Phone cameras captured every micro-expression on Blackstone's face as 40 years of casual racism faced its reckoning. What I meant was... Blackstone floundered, searching for any escape from his own recorded words, but social media had already rendered its verdict. #racist investor trended worldwide with 2 million mentions in 30 minutes. Video clips of his most damning quotes spread across platforms faster than Technova's stock recovery. Blackstone's phone buzzed incessantly. Text messages from business partners, panicked calls from his investment firm's board. Emergency meetings demanded his immediate presence. "Richard," his assistant's voice trembled through the phone speaker. "Stanford Business School just removed you from their advisory board. 3 pension funds are pulling their investments. The Country Club, they want to discuss your membership status." Each notification was another domino falling. Blackstone's carefully constructed empire of influence crumbling in real time. Young engineer David Kim had uploaded the full confrontation to LinkedIn with the caption, "This is what unconscious bias looks like in Silicon Valley. Do better." The video garnered 50,000 shares in an hour. Comments poured in from industry professionals distancing themselves from Blackstone's behavior. Several companies announced they were severing ties with his investment group. But the cruelest blow came from an unexpected source. CNN's financial correspondent Sarah Carter appeared on the showcase floor with a camera crew. "Mr. Blackstone, our investigation reveals that your investment group pressured Technova to rush this AI integration without proper testing phases. Your demands for accelerated deployment directly caused today's failure." Blackstone's face went pale. That's completely false. We have emails," Carter interrupted, holding up printed documents. "Your firm threatened to withdraw funding unless Technova moved up their demonstration timeline by 6 weeks. The revelation hit like a bomb. Blackstone hadn't just been wrong about Samuel, he'd been the architect of the very crisis he'd blamed on others. Technova's board members huddled in urgent conversation. Liability issues, lawsuit potential, the need for immediate distance from toxic associations. Within hours, the consequences cascaded through Blackstone's world with mathematical precision. His investment firm lost 40% of its assets under management. The Securities and Exchange Commission announced an investigation into his group's due diligence practices. Meanwhile, Samuel's engineering innovations helped Technova stock triple in value over the following months. Early investors who'd bet against Blackstone's judgment found themselves enormously wealthy. The perfect irony wasn't lost on anyone. The man who'd tried to destroy Samuel's reputation had destroyed his own instead. Samuel maintained perfect dignity throughout Blackstone's downfall, never gloating or seeking revenge. When reporters asked for comment, he simply said, "I hope he learns something from this. We all deserve chances to grow." 6 months later, Samuel Washington sits in his corner office overlooking Silicon Valley, his father's toolbox displayed proudly on the executive desk. The Samuel Washington Institute for Practical Engineering has identified 47 overlooked experts across 12 industries. The Ferrari that changed everything now tours technology conferences as proof that genius doesn't always wear a diploma. Samuel's mechanical intuition guides Technova's revolutionary human-AI collaboration protocols, bridging 40 years of wisdom with cutting-edge innovation. Dr. Vasquez stops by weekly, their partnership producing breakthroughs that neither could achieve alone. "You were right," she tells him. "Machines do have heartbeats. We just needed someone who could hear them." The industry has changed. Skills-based hiring is becoming standard. The Samuel standard means evaluating talent by competence, not credentials. Sometimes the most profound solutions come from those who learn to listen when the world told them to stay silent. If it were you watching someone's talent dismissed because of prejudice, would you speak up? There's a detail only sharp-eyed viewers will notice at minute 4:23, the moment everything changed. Subscribe for more stories of hidden potential transforming our world, because the person everyone underestimates might be the one who saves everything.
At Black Voices Uncut, we don't polish away the pain or water down the message. We tell it like it is because the truth deserves nothing less. If today's story spoke to you, click like, join the conversation in the comments, and subscribe so you'll be here for the next Uncut Voice.